This is Ramesh Ranjan, the founder and editor of Human Engineers, a popular HR website. And I welcome you to this HR talk show, People at Work, where we engage with business, HR, and thought leaders to try and understand how do we maximize the potential of employees and make the most of the people. The Indian startup economy is the third largest in the world, only behind China and the US. As per the Economic Survey 2021, there are about 46,000 recognized startups by the government of India, and the record shows that they employ close to 500,000 employees. It is said that 3 unicorns are produced in India every month, and as of today, we have about 51 unicorns. And in fact, we are ahead of UK and Germany. The startups' contribution to the India's economy is not well documented, but one thing is very clear, that the startups are fueling the growth of the Indian economy and are also going to play a key role in ensuring that India's ambition of reaching $5 trillion by 2025 with their innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. About 75% of the startups, or should I say, only about 25% of the startups really succeed. The biggest challenge is how do we scale up from idea generation to commercialization? We all understand that people are our single biggest resource and the greatest differentiator between success and failures. So how do we make the most of the people? How do we formalize HR? And when do we introduce HR into the startup community? Or rather, should we say, when HR in startups is a burning question for many entrepreneurs. Who better to answer this than Narayan, our guest on today's show? Narayan, thank you so much for agreeing to come on this show. And we look forward to some meaningful discussions with you.
Thank you, Ranjan. It's my pleasure.
So Narayan, in a career spanning over 25 years, is currently the CHRO at Accel Partners, and he engages with the portfolio companies and oversees and enables the entire efficacy of the people practices. He's a certified business coach and helps with leadership development by creating organizational coaching framework and coaching business leaders. Prior to Accel, Narayan has worked with companies like Capillary, Rambus, AT&T GBS, iPass, Core Systems, and Qualcomm in various people practice roles. He's a postgraduate in HR and has also done his executive program at the ISB school, at the Indian School of Business, ISB, Hyderabad. When not at work, he pursues his joys in mountaineering, having summited a few peaks in India and the world over. He's an avid marathoner with a passion for long distance running and is due to have his next run in the Paris Marathon next month. Narayan, it's a pleasure to have you on this show, and we look forward to hearing from you as to when HR in startups. Over to you, Narayan.
Thank you, Ranjan. Hello, everyone. Like Ranjan indicated, startups is really adding fuel to growth of our economy, while it's also offering a great deal of employment to our citizens, and it's also propelling financial inclusion through equity. Now, before I get into the HR part, let me spend a couple of minutes in giving a very fundamental distinction between a role of human resources. Right now, human resources play if I have to go back and dissect the role of human resources into three different paradigms, three different attributes. The first one is the transactional layer. When I say the transactional layer, while you are trying to deliver something through transaction, it's non-value add, but it needs to be done. What does that mean? It means your compliance, your offer letters, then running payroll, uh, uh, all of these are transactional, and including answering some of the employee questions on pay slips are all called transactional. Right? Now, that is also a role played by the human resource practitioner. Then the next comes is the tactical piece, which includes partnering with the managers, with the employees to really understand their needs and support them in various attributes of people, which includes someone needs to be promoted. It's a career conversation, career progression conversation. The tactical attributes come into play. That's the role of human resource. And when you're hiring someone, you need to have a conversation to understand and assimilate whether the person is a great fit to an organization. HR plays a role of making due assessment of candidate from the organization perspective. This is the tactical part of what HR plays. Then the most important one is the strategic piece, which means having a vision of what the organization need to do or perform in the next 6, 8 months, 12 months, 1 year, and 2 years, and so on and so forth. So which means HR plays a clear distinction of all the three roles, which means transactional, tactical, and strategic. Now, in startups journey too, what would happen is an early stage founder, he would not need someone who's very strategic or tactical in nature. He probably would need someone who can help him process payroll, answer some of employee questions and queries, comply with the compliance piece, and do talent acquisition. Because startups, one of the larger attribute of need today is talent acquisition. Because talent is in high demand, and the founder needs to have a very clear say in hiring the right kind of talent. Hence, he needs a support from the HR practitioner who's transactional in nature, right? Which is doing talent acquisition, which means that's the layer which the founder will focus on hiring at a very early stage. Now, what does early stage mean? Probably someone with 5 to about 20, 25, 30 employees who are still ideating their product, who are still trying to facilitate and understand how to go to market from the GTM strategy to really understand it. And that is where the founders. Now, once the founder really has an understanding of all these, and he is moved away from breaking the barrier of having 25, 30 and more employees, the complexity of the organization would start to evolve and change. Because he's put a very strong fundamental on the transaction piece, because governance and compliance is as critical and as important. You can outsource it, while it is also important in fundraising. Okay? So hence, in that context, your governance and compliance is very important. So that's taken care of. Then in scale, either the HR practitioner, who's been in the organization performing transactional tasks, has the ability to move up to perform much larger tactical roles by partnering with the business leaders and founders to get them perspective on what they need, requirements are. Now here too, this is the time while the organization is start to put in place some of the policies, procedures, and practices. Okay. Now the culture is in the forming stage, and the founder is still discussing and talking about compensation and benefits, and very fluid, agile org design, and also from the talent acquisition point of view, it is probably getting to a state of maturity because, by the time they are 25 to about 60, 65, 70 employees, you need to have a well-oiled process to go back and attract that, right? So that is the centerpiece, which is the tactical piece. And that's where the founder would go back and either promote the person, who is joined in very early with him, performing talent acquisition and transactional role to tactical, or if he finds gap within the organization in partnering. Now, earlier, like you said, in transactional, it was largely focused on data, number, and service part of it. Now, the second layer would start moving to partnering, understanding, and probably giving more insights and more support to the founder in dealing with human issues, human partnering issues, conflicts, and some basic understanding of ethics and well-being and so on and so forth. Right? So that is the evolution of human resources in the in startup. Now, once the startup has single product, they have the GTM, then they are moving from one country, from one product to multiple products. The organizations start to swell, which means, from probably in early stage, you probably will have three functions, which is technology, product, and marketing. Right? Now, if you're a consumer company, you will have two more, which is logistics into the thing. Now, once you become a little bigger, 25 and more, then you'll start to add marketing function. You'll also start to add finance function. And then as and when the organization becomes more than 120, 150, now there's also a clear distinction. SaaS companies would go from the numbers which I said, while the consumer-driven companies, while you have logistics, you have supply chain, all these companies will have a lot of feet on street people, who are driving business or propelling business on the ground. There, the number could be 5, 10, 15 times much more higher than the numbers which I indicated. So you've understood transaction and time. Next comes the strategic piece. Now, strategic piece is when the company has moved to Series B, Series A or Series B. They have raised a significant amount of capital. So that, and this is a time where the founder, in partnership with his leadership team, is recommended to go back and hire a seasoned HR practitioner. Now, a seasoned HR practitioner who is largely execution focused, but also strategic oriented. And the reason being is because there's still a lot of execution that needs to be done on the ground, because there needs to be a lot of catch up that needs to be done on the ground. And someone needs to be execution focused. And then strategic orientation, because he or she needs to become a partner to the founder in helping him or her really understand the needs of how do you define and develop OKRs. How are you going to, because then you would have been multi-location, multi-product, your organization would have multi-functions. Okay, you need to have a clear framework and guidelines and a transparent approach for career progression, compensation and benefits, and also start articulating culture. What is so unique about your organization? So that is going to be the evolution of HR in a startup. Now, once the strategic position comes into play, we also need to understand there is a very interesting shift which happens in the organizational mindset too. To give you an example, when the founder starts his organization, he needs to create a great product. Either it is commerce, either it is B2B, either it is SaaS or whatever. He needs to create a great product. So his priority is always going to be on the product first, profit next, and people last. Okay.
Right.
And this is a very interesting scenario. Why? And this is a given because he needs to get a great product into market so that he can get go to market strategy and approach, get good investors on board. Now at Series B, what is going to happen is his direct influence on the team would start to diminish because he'll have managers of managers. He needs to move from being a informal communicator to a formal communicator, because the organization would have swelled 150 to 200 to 300 to 500 people based on the kind of business you are in. And he needs to start having a vision and a purpose which starts to articulate and start to attract talent. Because if you have to hire and attract strategic talent, you need to have a great story and a great vision and a great purpose. Only then people who are strategic and seasoned players would join him. Now, in this transition, what is going to happen is the founder has to flip his thought process from product, profit, and people to people, product, and profit, which means he needs to go back and start articulating his needs of hiring and retaining great talent, who probably would help him propel his product growth, which in turn brings great profits to his organization. That shift needs to happen. Now, from here onwards, that is, once the shift needs to happen, right, there HR plays a very important and pivotal role in the success of the organization. He becomes a true strategic partner to the founder in understanding and bringing the organization together, in communicating purpose, in defining practices, in defining and articulating culture, and looking at org design. Now I'll rephrase it, looking at org design every 6 months, because org structures are more hierarchical in nature. Org design are more letting the information flow through the bottom value of the organization. So org design, then rewards, considering there is a war of talent happening, great rewards, and last but not the least, the compliance. That's the evolution of HR in a startup. Ranjan, happy to answer any questions.
Very interesting, Narayan, and also very candid when you talked about saying that the in the evolution of the startups, the priorities of the entrepreneurs, to start with, at the bottom of the pyramid, it's more on product and then the profit and then people. And then you said that as they evolve and as the complexities grow and as the company starts growing, then they need to flip it and then focuses more on people and then trying to generate profit and then the product, right?
People, product, and profit.
Sorry, people, product, and profit. And you very rightly said, you said that the focus in the initial stages is more for execution strategy, for which it's going to be more transactional and then tactical. And then as they progress, they would try to become more strategic, right? So my question, just to sum it up, Narayan, when do we actually hire a HR leader? When does he actually formally come into the organization?
See, now there is a, what do you call it? I wouldn't use the word HR leader. I would call it as an HR practitioner, because maturity and scale are two important attributes for a practitioner, right? Now in series, and one thing I have observed in startup is, sorry if I'm a little candid here, whoever you hire in early stage becomes redundant at series B, series A, series B, and whoever you hire in series B would become redundant at series E and F. The reason being is the fast-paced growth in which the organization or the startup is growing. Okay, some individuals have the capacity or the tenacity to learn and grow and acclimatize to the evolution, while some might not have the tenacity to learn and acclimatize. Okay, so hence in that context, what I would say is your real HR leader who's mature, who's very strategic in nature, who's a thought leader, would probably be hired at series E and above. Probably before that, when I say thought leader, someone who's been there, done that, who have seen multiple cycles of growth in different organizations, right? And they're the ones who probably would be there. But before that, you will have, like I said, from transactional, tactical to strategic. There are people who need to take the organization, do the heavy lifting to move it to that position. So for that, you'll have people who are senior managers, directors in organizations, to come and do that heavy lifting to move the organization to scale and growth until what the organization would be at Series E. To give you an interesting distinction, if you are, let's say, a director. Now I'm not a great fan of title. I'm a great fan of role which the person has performed. But to give you an example, I'm using this. If you have a director working in a large business organization, he probably would be hired as a vice president or a senior vice president in a startup at Series C or a Series D. Okay, right? While if he has to go to a same large organization, he would still be called as a director.
Right.
Now, and the same thing holds good if someone who is a vice president or a senior vice president in a large organization, he would be hired as a CHRO at Series E, Series E and F kind of a stage, who's more strategic in nature, who's seen a lot of M&A, who's seen a lot of complex organization, multiple product lines. Because let's also understand, this is not about human resource, this is about business getting the right kind of capabilities to manage the complexity of the business through people.
Narayan, there's a general perception, maybe it's a misunderstanding but it's a perception that HR is more a controller than an enabler. So is that one of the reasons why startup entrepreneurs are reluctant to bring in the controllers in the early stages of the evolution of the startup?
First, let me articulate it a little different. First, there's a business need in which the founder needs to make the choice, right? The second is yes, because what is HR's role, being of the past, right? Is what we do is we are good in creating frameworks, guidelines, and processes, and let them live the life as long it exists. We don't look at evolution. We don't look at modifying. We don't look at, because what is HR's role is we need to create framework, and this is the era of personal management and human resources.
Right. Which
was of 1990s and 2000, where we wanted frameworks so that it is repeatable. The processes are repeatable, so that we get in more efficiency, like Six Sigma of the world, and that largely would happen in large high-scale growth organizations. While in most startups, because there's innovation involved, the more early you start putting these practices in place and curtailing employees and their innovation, right? Because there's a wonderful correlation. The more processes you put, people will take asylum in them and stop innovating.
Right.
And they won't be as agile as they could be. The second and the other important, if you inundate a startup very early on with more processes, then your agility takes a beating. Right. And even most importantly, what is going to happen is the founder's growth in managing complexity, because the learning for a founder comes from when he looks at different dimensions of business. One is product, one is on the financial side, and the one is on the people side. Now, in all the three dimensions, the founder also needs to learn, and it's his playground. And the most important opportunity for the founders learning to amalgamate all the three of product, profit, and people learning comes in those early stages. And someone who could not inundate the organization with a lot of processes, and make the founders' life more difficult, because then he needs to read well upon, how is he going to bring back innovation? Because innovation propels profitability, right? Efficiency propels a little bit of increase in value. So hence, the founders need to very clearly understand, and this is one of the reasons HR practitioners, seasoned HR practitioners, I would say, because they need to be brought in at the right stage. And sometimes, as a matter of fact, we recommend founders not to hire senior, because then what is going to happen is, if it's only strategic in nature, then that's when we recommend them to bring in more seasoned professionals.
Right.
Or else someone who's more tactical, someone who's on the ground, feet on street, who's an hustler, who can go back and deliver value and things, are the ones in a way.
Very true, very interesting, Narayan. And very nicely put across, saying that it's more laying the foundation to start with, and then, of course, the governance, and then the scalability, and then the bringing in the culture of innovation is how the startups evolve. And accordingly, the entrepreneurs also need to evolve themselves and then bring in the right HR people at the right time with the right skill set to ensure that the HR is able to contribute, become an enabler in the progress of the organization and the success of the organization, and ultimately, of course, to make the most of the people. So thank you very much, Narayan, for this very candid and insightful discussions, and also putting up a small framework, a pyramid-like framework for startups to learn how do we evolve in this area of people management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ranjan.
Thank you, and we look forward to having you again for future discussions in the area of people management, especially from the startup community.
Thank you, Ranjan. Happy to be of help because I believe HR can play a very interesting and a pivotal role in building great organizations. And I think we have some amazing practitioners today who are building some big companies, and happy to bring them through for our audience.
Thank you.